I still remember the exact moment my sister looked me dead in the eyes, slid a restaurant receipt across the table, and said, "You're adopted. Go find another spot to sit, and since you're not really family, you can cover the bill." That bill was $3,120 at a family dinner, in front of everyone. I could actually hear my own heartbeat in my ears, and for a second, I genuinely wondered if I was about to faint or scream. Was I wrong for what I eventually did after that night, or would you have snapped too if you were in my place? Let me back up, because to understand why this hurts so deeply, you need to understand my family, my childhood, and the invisible line I spent my entire life trying not to cross. I was adopted as a baby. I've always known that. My parents never hid it from me, and growing up, they made a point of telling me I was chosen. They'd say things like, "We didn't have you by accident, we picked you." And as a kid, that felt special. I believed it. I clung to it. But as I got older, especially once my parents had my younger sister, that feeling started to crack in tiny ways I didn't have the words for back then. My sister, Lily, is 3 years younger than me. She's biologically theirs. Blonde hair like my mom, the same sharp eyes as my dad. When people met us, they'd always comment on how much she looked like them, then glance at me and politely say something like, "Aw, and you must take after another relative." My parents would laugh it off, but I noticed. I always noticed. Lily noticed too. At first, it was small stuff. She'd get away with things I couldn't. If we both broke a rule, I'd be grounded longer. If she cried, my mom rushed to comfort her. If I cried, I was told to be strong. As kids, siblings fight. I get that. But Lily learned early that adopted was a word with power. The first time she used it against me, we were maybe 10 and 7. She wanted my seat on the couch, and when I said no, she shouted, "You're not even really my brother." The room went silent. My mom scolded her, told her never to say that again, and Lily cried and apologized. I forgave her. I always forgave her. But something lodged itself in my chest that day, like a splinter I could never fully pull out. As we grew up, Lily became difficult. Entitled is the nicest word I can use. She expected things to go her way, and most of the time, they did. My parents loved us both. I know they did, but they were softer with her. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't need as much. I got a job in high school. I helped with bills in college. I moved out early and built my own life. Lily stayed closer to home, financially and emotionally. Despite all that, I tried. I really did. I showed up to every holiday. I bought thoughtful gifts. I called my parents every week. I swallowed comments from extended family about how lucky I was to be adopted, as if my existence was a favor they could revoke. I told myself that family is what you make it, and if I just kept proving myself, eventually I'd feel secure. Eventually, I'd belong without question. Fast forward to last year. My parents decided to host a big family dinner at a fancy restaurant to celebrate their anniversary. It wasn't at home, not at some casual place either. This was the kind of restaurant where the lighting is dim. The menus don't have prices, and the waiters look like they could judge your entire life based on how you hold your fork. I remember thinking it was a bit much, but my parents were excited, and I wanted to make them happy. By this point, I was doing well financially. I'd worked my way up in my career, lived modestly, saved aggressively. Lily, on the other hand, was not. She bounced between jobs, spent money she didn't have, and constantly complained that life was unfair to her. She was married now, to a guy named Mark who matched her energy perfectly. Loud, opinionated, and weirdly competitive with me for no reason I could ever pinpoint. The dinner itself started fine. We were seated at a long table. My parents at the center, Lily and Mark on one side, me on the other. Extended family filled in the rest. Wine flowed. Laughter echoed. For a while, I let myself relax. I remember thinking, maybe I've been overthinking things. Maybe tonight will just be nice. Then, the seating issue happened. It sounds so stupid when I say it out loud, but it was the spark. A late, arriving cousin needed a chair. The waiter suggested pulling one from the end. Lily rolled her eyes and said, "Why doesn't he move?" and nodded toward me. I laughed awkwardly and said I was fine where I was. She leaned closer, her voice low but sharp, and said, "Seriously, go find another spot." I looked around, expecting someone to say something. My parents were mid-conversation. No one noticed the tension. I shrugged it off and shifted my chair slightly to make room. I didn't want to cause a scene. I never want to cause a scene. That's kind of my curse. As the night went on, Lily drank more. Her comments became sharper, more pointed. Little digs about my job, my single status, how quiet I was. Mark laughed along, adding his own remarks. I smiled through it, but inside, that old splinter was twisting. Then the bill came. The waiter placed it neatly in the center, inside a black leather folder. My dad reached for it automatically, but Lily's hand shot out faster. She opened it, her eyes widening dramatically. "Whoa," she said loudly, drawing attention. $3,120. That's a lot. My dad chuckled and said, "Well, it's a special occasion." Lily looked at me then. Not casually, deliberately, she smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile that feels like a dare. She slid the folder across the table toward me, the leather scraping softly against the wood, and said, "You can get this." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "What?" She didn't laugh back. "You heard me." My mom frowned. "Lily, what are you?" "She's always talking about how well he's doing." Lily interrupted, nodding toward my mom without looking at her. "Plus," she added, her voice dropping just enough to feel intimate and cruel, "he's adopted. He's not really family, so why should we pay for him? He can go find another spot and cover the bill." The table went dead silent. Conversations around us blurred into a dull hum. I felt heat rush to my face, then drain away completely. It was like my body didn't know whether to fight or flee. Every pair of eyes slowly turned toward me. Some shocked, some uncomfortable, some curious, like they were watching a live drama unfold and didn't want to miss a second. My mom's mouth fell open. My dad's face went red. Someone gasped, but no one spoke immediately. That pause felt like an eternity. In that moment, every memory I'd buried came roaring back. Every time I'd been reminded, subtly or not, that I was different. Every time I'd tried harder, been better, stayed quieter, just to earn my place. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to laugh it off, all at once. My dad finally said her name sharply. My mom told her to apologize. Lily rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "I'm just saying the truth," she said. "Why is everyone so sensitive?" I looked down at the bill, $320, a number that suddenly felt symbolic, like a price tag on my belonging. I could afford it. That was the worst part. I could pay it without ruining myself, and Lily knew that. She knew exactly what she was doing. So that was the situation I was in. Sitting at a table full of people who were supposed to be my family, being publicly reminded that, to at least one of them, I was disposable. Before I tell you what I did next, before I tell you how this dinner ended and how it changed everything, I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself this: if you were in my shoes, humiliated like that, would you have paid the bill just to keep the peace? Or would you have finally drawn a line? I picked up the leather folder with the bill in it, and for a second, my hands were actually shaking. I remember thinking how absurd that was, because I've handled stressful situations before. Big ones. Deadlines, emergencies, moments where real money and real consequences were on the line. But this wasn't about money. This was about something far more primitive. It was about belonging, dignity, and the one word I'd spent my entire life pretending didn't hurt me anymore: adopted. The waiter stood awkwardly nearby, pretending not to notice the tension, but absolutely noticing it. My dad was halfway out of his chair, like he might stand up and take control, but I caught his eye and subtly shook my head. I didn't even know why I did that. Maybe part of me wanted to see how this would play out if I didn't save everyone. Maybe I was just tired. Lily was watching me closely, her head tilted slightly, lips pressed together in that smug, expectant way. Mark leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking entertained. That look on his face did something to me. It flipped a switch. I realized, very suddenly and very clearly, that if I paid that bill quietly, smiled, and let this slide like I always had, this would never be the last time. This would become a story they told, a joke, proof that they could push me, label me, humiliate me, and I'd still comply. So I did something I'd never done before. I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor cut through the restaurant noise, and a few nearby tables glanced over. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my voice came out steadier than I expected. I looked at Lily, then at Mark, then slowly around the table at my parents and the rest of my family. "I'm not paying this," I said. Lily laughed, short and sharp. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," I replied. "I'm being clear." My dad immediately said my name, that warning tone parents use when they think you're about to make a mistake. My mom looked like she was on the verge of tears. But I kept going, because if I stopped, I knew I'd crumble. "You don't get to call me family when it's convenient, and then throw my adoption in my face when you want to humiliate me," I said, looking directly at Lily. "You don't get to decide whether I belong." Lily rolled her eyes again. "I was joking." "No, you weren't," I said, "and even if you were, it wasn't funny." The table was silent again, but this time it felt different. Heavier. Like something irreversible had started. I closed the folder and gently placed it back in the center of the table. "I'll pay for my own meal," I continued. "But I'm not covering this dinner, and I'm definitely not moving seats or finding another spot because you think I'm less than you." Mark scoffed. "Wow. Sensitive much." That was when my dad finally snapped. He slammed his hand on the table, hard enough to make the glasses rattle. "'Nuff," he said. "This is unacceptable." Lily turned on him instantly. "Oh, so you're taking his side now?" "There are no sides," my dad said, his face red. "What you said was cruel." My mom started crying quietly, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "I can't believe we're doing this here," she whispered. I stood there for another moment, feeling like I was watching myself from outside my body. Then I said, "I'm leaving." That caused another wave of reactions. My mom begged me to sit down. My dad told me we'd talk about it later. Lily said, "Typical," under her breath, but I was already grabbing my jacket. I pulled out my card, flagged down the waiter, and paid for my own portion of the meal right there, standing up, while the rest of the table watched. As I walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air hit my face, and that's when my hands really started shaking. I sat in my car for a long time before driving. I didn't cry, not then, I was too numb. The next day, my phone exploded. Missed calls from my parents, texts from extended family. A long message from Lily that started with, "I can't believe you embarrassed me like that," and somehow managed to frame me as the villain. Mark sent a passive-aggressive text about how family helps family, which almost made me laugh if it hadn't made me so angry. I didn't respond immediately. For once, I gave myself space, and in that space, something uncomfortable but important happened. I started replaying my entire life through a different lens. Every time I'd been asked to compromise more, every time I'd been told to let it go, for the sake of peace, every time Lily had crossed a line, and I'd been expected to absorb it quietly because that's just how she is. A week later, my parents asked to meet. Just the three of us. No Lily, no Mark. We met at their house, the same house I grew up in, with the same photos on the walls that told a story of a happy family. I sat on the couch I'd sat on 1,000 times before and felt like a guest. My mom apologized first. She said she was sorry she hadn't shut it down faster. Sorry she hadn't protected me. My dad said he was ashamed of Lily's behavior and angry at himself for not addressing it sooner. Hearing that helped, but it also hurt, because it confirmed something I'd always suspected. They'd seen it. They'd just hoped it would go away on its own. Then they asked me what I wanted to do. That question terrified me more than the dinner ever had. Because for the first time, the decision wasn't about money or seats or saving face. It was about boundaries. I told them I needed space from Lily. Real space. I said I wasn't going to attend events where she was present unless she acknowledged what she'd done and genuinely apologized. Not one of her half-hearted, eye-rolling apologies. A real one. My parents agreed, reluctantly. They said they'd talk to her. That conversation did not go well. According to my mom, Lily lost it. She accused them of choosing me over her. She brought up my adoption again, saying things like, "You always treat him like he's fragile because he's not really yours." When my mom told me that, something inside me broke and healed at the same time. Broke because hearing it out loud still hurt. Healed because it finally stripped away the last bit of denial. Lily refused to apologize. Instead, she doubled down. She told relatives her version of the story, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful adopted sibling who turned his back on the family over a joke. Some people believed her. Some reached out to me privately to say they were sorry, and that what she said was out of line, but they didn't want to get involved. Family gatherings became complicated. Holidays were split, birthdays awkward. My parents tried to juggle, but the tension was always there, and through all of it, Lily never reached out to me directly. Not once. Months passed. The anger faded into something quieter and heavier. Grief, maybe. Grief for the family I thought I had, or the version of my sister I kept hoping she'd become. Then, out of nowhere, Lily called me. I almost didn't answer. My thumb hovered over the screen for a long time before I finally swiped. She didn't apologize. Not really. She said things like, "I guess things got out of hand," and, "You know I didn't mean it like that." She complained about how hard the situation had been for her, how our parents were treating her differently now, how she felt isolated. At one point, she said, "I just don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this." And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This wasn't about alcohol or a bad joke or a stressful night. This was about a fundamental lack of respect that had always been there. So I told her that. I told her that until she could acknowledge the harm she caused and stop using my adoption as a weapon. I wasn't interested in having a relationship. I told her I loved the idea of having a sister, but I wasn't willing to keep paying the emotional bill for her cruelty. She hung up on me, and you know what? It hurt. Of course it did. But it also felt like exhaling after holding my breath for decades. Life moved on. I focused on my work. I built stronger friendships. I spent more time with people who didn't question my place in their lives. My relationship with my parents slowly improved, though it's different now. More honest, more careful. As for Lily, we exist in the same orbit but don't touch. She's still married to Mark. From what I hear, not much has changed. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about that dinner the way I do. Sometimes I wonder if she regrets it. Most of the time, I don't let myself dwell on it. The $320 bill became a symbol in my mind, not of money, but of the cost of silence. The cost of letting things slide to keep the peace. I realized that night that peace bought with self-erasure isn't peace at all. So was I wrong for standing up and refusing to pay? Was I wrong for drawing a line that fractured my family? Or was that fracture already there, just waiting for the right moment to show itself? If you made it this far, I really want to know what you think. Like this video if you were on my side, or even if you're conflicted about it. Subscribe for more stories like this, because unfortunately, I have a feeling I'm not the only one who's been through something like this. And share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I read them, I really do.